And I have the oven one and
Yeah, I know.
so many others.
That is really
But it's bad because you're like,
Are all
you know, spend all this money.
Right, Brian?
exactly. That's right.
More lucrative.
okay.
Three proclamations.
Those are good.
Hey, Mark, I just want to point out, you said you know 9 times in like a minute and a half.
No,
Oh, oh, do you like the brown one?
yeah.
Here.
That's
Wash
funny.
my hands, don't worry.
Because like if I ever see the bag of just the brown, that's what I buy.
There you go.
All right, thank you.
Ready left, ready right?
Yep, ready,
All
ready.
right, let's do this. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regularly scheduled Evans City Council meeting for May 2nd, 2023. My name is Mark Clark Romero. I'll call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Clark,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Castle,
Here.
Councilmember Spear,
Here.
Councilmember Johnson,
Present.
Councilmember Neal,
Present.
Councilmember Mortensen,
Here.
Councilmember Providence.
Present.
All right. Next item on the agenda, we have three proclamations. The first one is the Professional Municipal Court Clerks Week for 2023, and I'll read that here. Whereas the office of the Professional Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of our local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the Professional Municipal Clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the Professional Municipal Clerk provides the professional link between citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. And whereas professional municipal clerks continuously strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education, programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishment of the office of the professional municipal clerk. Therefore, I, Mark C. Clark, Mayor of the City of Evans, do recognize the week of April 30th through May 6, 2023 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Julie Kemka, and our Deputy City Clerk, Amanda Barman, and to all professional municipal clerks for their vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to our communities they represent. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be the official seal of the City of Evans the 2nd day of May 2023. And I know Julie will accept this, and Amanda, is she here with you?
No, she decided not to come in tonight, so
Oh, I see how it is.
she just got back from vacation.
So she needed a vacation
From her vacation. Thank you.
Next one, Police Week for 2023. To recognize National Police Week 2023 and to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. Whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the calendar week of which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including dedicated members of the City of Evans, Colorado Police Department. And whereas there were 43,649 assaults against law enforcement officers in 2021, resulting in approximately 15,369 injuries. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1791, more than 23,800 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including one member of the City of Evans, Colorado Police Department. And whereas the names of those dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Office Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas 224 police officers were killed in the line of duty in 2022, and whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2023. And whereas the Candlelight Vigil is a part of National Police Week, which takes place this year on May 14th through 20th. And whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and the U.S. flag should be flown at half-staff. And therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Evans do hereby formally designate May 14th through May 20th, 2023 as Police Week in the City of Evans, and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and communities across the nation. In testimony whereof the Mayor of the City of Evans has hereunto subscribed his name and has caused the official seal of the City of Evans to hereunto affixed on the 2nd day of May 2023. And I know Chief Brandt and Tanner, Chief Brandt is here to accept this. And our next one is for our Mental Health Month of 2023. Whereas now more than ever, we must understand that the health of our minds is as important as physical health. And whereas 1 in every 4 people are affected by mental illness, with more Weld County residents having reported mental health challenges such as depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions than in years past. And whereas Evans residents can find recovery through a variety of outpatient, residential, and clinical walk-in crisis support options through Weld County's Community Mental Health Center, North Range Behavioral Health. And whereas Evans residents are healthier because of North Range commitment to preventing hospitalizations, incarcerations, trauma, suicides, and substance use disorders through collaboration with community health centers, school districts, human services, law enforcement, United Way, and many others. And whereas National Mental Health Month is observed every May to raise awareness about behavioral health recovery and hope, the importance of prevention, and the factors that contribute to mental wellness. Now, therefore, I, Mark Clark, Mayor of the City of Evans, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Mental Health Month in the City of Evans and call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our community to increase awareness and understanding of behavioral health and understanding the needs for appropriate and accessible services for all citizens. And witness whereof I am hereunto set my hand and cause to be effect the official seal of the City of Evans, the 2nd day of May 2023. And I believe there is Marcella Sanchez and Chief Brandt here to accept this proclamation. Michaela, sorry. All right, next item on the agenda, audience participation. Is there any anybody in the audience that wishes to address city council on any item that is not of a public hearing or on the agenda? Seeing none. Are there any, moving on, approval of the agenda, is there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
Okay.
I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, item number 4, consent agenda. Approval of the April 18th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I have a motion, a second, to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, old business. Item number 5, public hearing. Request continuance to continue consideration. Request to continue consideration of replat of lots 1 and 2 of Tuscany's second filing, replat A, known as Saddleback and Tuscany, located at the northeast corner of 37th Street and 47th Avenue. And it's taking a second. And it looks like we're going to move this to June 6th, so I will reopen the public hearing and I would entertain a motion.
Sorry, not there yet.
All right, I'll move to continue the consideration of the replat of lots 1 and 2 of Tuscany, second filing, replat A to the June 6, 2023 City Council meeting.
I second.
I have a motion, a second, to move to continue the consideration of the replat of lots 1 and 2 of Tuscany's second filing, replat A, to the June 6, 2023 City Council meeting. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, next item, old business, item number 6, public hearing. Request to continue the consideration of replat of Grapevine Hollow, outlot 11, to create 7 lots located southeast of the intersection of Chardonnay Street and Muscat Court. I will open the public hearing and I will entertain a motion to continue that.
I move to continue the consideration of the replat of outlet 11 of Grapevine Hollow to July 18, 2023.
I second.
Motion second to continue the consideration of replat of outlot 11 Grapevine Hollow to July 18, 2023. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, moving on. New business. Item number 7, consideration of resolution number 14-2023 to adopt the City of Evans 2023 wastewater utility master plan, and we will hear from staff.
Yes, Mayor and council members, we're back before you with this wastewater utility master plan. We have Matt Goff and Kevin Greer with HDR back with us. They were with you at the work session before last. And this time, what we'd like to do is 3 things. Kind of present a summary of the information presented to date. Just a very brief overview to remind you of the basis of planning, the liquids processing, and the solids processing that was covered at your last work session. And there are 2 chapters of new information to you that are included in the report that was in your packet. The first one deals with the capital improvement plan, and then the executive summary. So the executive summary kind of sandwiches everything together. It's the very beginning, and the capital improvement plan is the punchline that talks about phasing and funding and all of that. One other item that we did not have time to talk about at the work session that Kevin and Matt will go over is the collections section. So collections, CIP, and then the executive summary. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt and Kevin. Invite them up here. We'll play musical chairs. And at the conclusion of their presentation, we'd welcome your comments, questions. We do have a resolution before you. It's resolution number 14-2023 that would adopt the City of Evans 2023 wastewater utility master plan if you're ready to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for having us again. So, if you don't recall, I'm Kevin Greer with HDR. This is Matt Goff. So we led the master plan with a number of our staff assisting. So today, like Randy said, we will start by recapping what we discussed last time in the work session. That's focused on the basis of planning, the liquid treatment improvements, and the solids handling improvements, those recommendations. We'll go through the collection system recommendations, fairly briefly. There's not a ton there you'll see, but since we didn't get to that last time, we want to make sure we touch on it. We'll get into the capital improvements plan and answer any questions. So if you recall, we've established a revised wastewater planning boundary from the previous master plan. The main difference is that on the left or the northwest side there's a little bit of a change in that pink outline. The dark blue in the upper right represents a long-term service area. So it's included in when we start talking about collection system planning, but not necessarily the wastewater treatment plant as it's a little further out. And then LaSalle, we've identified as a potential long-term service area. And that's pending ongoing discussions with the town of LaSalle for their possible inclusion or sending their flow to the city of Evans. So the current wastewater treatment plant permit has a hydraulic capacity of about 2.9 mg, that's million gallons per day, and a BOD loading capacity, that's biochemical oxygen demand, which loosely we can just refer to as organic loading, and that's about 6,600 pounds per day. So you can look in the left, or I guess the middle column, the 2022 max month, and then the far right column, the 2042 max month. That's the growth expected over the next 20 years, to go from a population of about 24,000 people to a population of about 40,000 people. An increase in commercial and industrial contribution to the wastewater plant of about 10%. And the other criteria are what we utilize in evaluating the treatment of the system. So this is the basis of that design. So when we get into liquid and solids improvements, those are developed based on these numbers that are gathered from real wastewater data. We also discussed that the flow and the organic loading are not growing at the same rate, or have not been growing at the same rate. And so you can see on the left we have the capacities, the three lines represent 80% of permitted capacity, 90%, and then the solid line is your permitted capacity. So you can see that on left, the flow, you're looking at adequate capacity out until the 2038 timeframe. Whereas on the right, the organic loading capacity is going to be exceeded in the 2028 timeframe. So about 10 years different. And I think we discussed a little bit last time what drives that. The majority of it is coming from a combination of tightening up your sewers, so not getting as much infiltration and inflow into the sewers themselves, and then also just general reduction in water consumption and water savings fixtures, and people's attitudes towards water use in Colorado are always changing. So the 80 and 90%, at 80% of capacity, either one, CDPHE requires that you start planning for expansion. At 90%, you have to be under construction. And so in your case, organic loading is driving this. And the first step with planning is essentially what we're presenting to you now. We also looked at build-out conditions. So this is well beyond 2042. This is based on the 2022 Community Master Plan. So build-out population in the city of Evans of about 76,500 people. This is only used for the long-term collection system modeling. This is used so that you don't have to, ideally you're sizing underground infrastructure that's very hard to get to for that build-out condition. Whereas when we talk about treatment plants, you don't necessarily want to build for that condition because it may never happen and it's a very expensive way to get there. But you're also along the time frame that you're looking, there's going to be numerous changes in regulation and technology. And so with a pipe, that technology is fairly limited. But treatment, it's more so. So we look at build out for that long-term collection system modeling. And just to be clear, these numbers and the associated 2.9 people per household, which is what that community master plan and that 76,500 is based on, is not used to determine this 20-year growth plan for the wastewater treatment plant. That is, at least my understanding from the community master plan is that's based on anticipated growth curves, more so than an actual people per household estimate.
That's right. Yep.
So in summary, you're looking at a small flow increase over this 20-year planning period for the wastewater plant, about 2.9 to 3.2 MGD. During that time, however, the organic loading is about 80% higher. So the design condition for 2042 is about 3.2 MGD and 10,300 pounds per day. Just want to make it clear that does not include the potential inclusion of LaSalle. So LaSalle would go on top of that. And then again, just a summary of our design criteria that we're looking at. The influent is based on data that's been collected. The effluent is based on our best assumption, knowing the regulatory landscape as to what we think the permit limits are going to be within this time frame.
Yeah, and those are critical for setting the stage for what treatment technologies we picked, how big those treatment technologies are, what the capacity that we can get out of a single train. All of that is dependent upon those influent and effluent criteria. If the effluent criteria is relaxed a whole bunch, okay, well now there's a whole bunch of extra capacity in the system and vice versa. So these are pretty stringent. Again, 20-year planning window. There's Regulation 31, which CDPHE put on the books back in 2012, which is going to require some very low effluent nitrogen and phosphorus limits. So it's taking into account what that's going to look like, at least from a ramping up standpoint. We didn't include it as part of the improvement itself, but you have to start at least planning for it.
Yeah. So there's a monetary placeholder for that project.
Yeah, in the CIP.
But that would be an example of why we wouldn't spend that $30 million today, because it's not necessary.
And the technology isn't there either.
And yeah.
we need another 15, 20 years to figure out how to deal with it.
So quick summary of LaSalle. This is based on their permit. So they're permitted for about 0.5 MGD or 1,800 pounds per day of organic loading. So when we go back to the previous slide and look at 3.2 MGD, the addition of LaSalle would increase to about 3.7 MGD, and then the 10,300 you would add the 1,800, so we're getting up in the 12,000 pounds per day range if they were included. When we talk about all of this, we have not included them, and the reason being that those are very preliminary discussions, and when you look at what it would do is push you back a little bit. So if we're saying that these improvements would be good to 2042, the inclusion of LaSalle before that time might mean that next expansion is 4 years earlier, right? It's not necessarily that you're going to miss it or something, or that you can't take on their flow. It's just going to shift your timeline. So the summary for the recommendation, and this has been modified slightly since we last talked, mostly based on your comments of what can we push out at least a few years out of the $30 million. So phase one is really to address the current capacity issue, get the organic loading treatment capacity up, and complete some of the minimum additional improvements, which include some work at the headworks and throughout the plant where equipment's maybe not functioning as planned, or there was some cost savings, or what we like to refer refer as value engineering that maybe didn't pan out as well as they thought. And so that's phase one, and that's right now. That's kind of the immediate project. Then we separated out phase two, and that's about $10 million worth of upgrades of other equipment that we expect to be at the end of its useful life, and improvements that operations staff would like to see but understands that needs to be pushed out a little bit for financial reasons. And then we have the long-term planning, and that's the 2038 and beyond, and that's the main thing there is what Matt referred to, the Regulation 31 low-level nutrient requirements. Those we have put in a placeholder. There are technologies that can get us close, but there are really no technologies to actually meet the proposed limits for nitrogen. Phosphorus, you can do it, just costs a lot of money. Solids handling is a little simpler. You don't have much to compare against right now. And so the recommended alternative was to go with a somewhat common technology called ATAD, or I'm never going to get this right. Autothermophilic aerobic digestion. So it's kind of it's a hybrid approach to anaerobic digestion that we've used in the past to break down the organic material further and destroy a lot more pathogens, and aerobic, which is easier to operate and typically used at smaller facilities. The benefit there is that you get a Class A sludge, which that can be Class A biosolid. I apologize. that can be applied in a lot more areas and less protected property. I think we may have brought up the example of St. Vrain, that it's compost quality, and they put it out next to the wastewater plant for the public to come pick up and utilize. Included in that is a thickening step and a dewatering step. It's very expensive to move water by truck, and so the goal is to keep as much water at the plant as possible and send mostly solids to wherever that ultimate disposal is. So those steps are included. And so the summary here with costs is, the top is the phase one, that's the immediate, about $4 million in the general improvements, $4 million to upgrade to that enhanced treatment that will help you meet the new permit or expand your permit, plus that solids handling component that doesn't exist right now. So that's about $29 million. And then, looking at all the different projects that were recommended and working with staff, we could break out about $10 million that is more of that equipment replacement and improvements beyond what's critical today. And so the 2028 timeframe is loose. Some of that could actually potentially be extended out further. So that might be a range of 2028 to 2038 that you take $1 million a year at it. Doesn't work out quite that easily, because some projects might be $4 million and others might be $500,000. But in general, a lot of that could be spread out over a few years. So, does anyone have any questions before I get into the collection system?
Anybody have any questions, comments about that part of the presentation? Go ahead, Rick. Got something?
Nope, just discussed
All right.
it at the price.
Yeah.
Well, it's only been, 5 years?
Yeah. I think one thing to remember is that $21 million for the solids handling was deferred from the previous project. So the solids handling wasn't included. So what we do for the collection system is we build a simplistic model of the system, and we input flows to the best using the information available. So we look at your GIS and we look at that community master plan, and we try to estimate where flow is coming into the pipe system, the pipe network. And we can update that, over the years based on actual projects. So like you can see the pipe that was upsized. The Evans Lift Station and Force Main is new since the model was developed because it used to be 2 treatment plants. So overall, this is what we did to get the model ready for use. It's still simplistic. It's only looking at your large pipes. It's not looking at any of the smaller, like neighborhood pipes. It's the main interceptors that go down your roads and collect all of that, those different neighborhoods. So this gives a rough summary of just some of the changes. Using the updated model, we first start by looking at the existing conditions. And PHF stands for peak hour flow. So collection system, your hydraulic capacity is more important now, or really it's the only thing you're caring about, is that actual liquid flow, where the treatment system cares a lot about the organics in that wastewater. The pipes we need to make sure they can carry that water. And so peak hour flow is the maximum hour of flow that you expect. So we first run it with your existing system and try to identify the problem areas. And staff already knows about all of these. Mark can attest. These are not surprises, but up at 37th Street east of the railroad, the industrial park, and 49th and Ashcroft Draw. So this essentially confirms what staff has seen, is that these areas have undersized pipes and they potentially surcharge manholes and cause other issues, require significant maintenance to keep very clean so that you don't get a backup.
And a good example is, that pipe east of the railroad on 37th. I'm sure you all have been out there during or after a nice thunderstorm, and just how much water collects, right? It's just so flat, right? There's hardly any grade. Well, you can imagine it's the same thing with the sewer line, right? So the less slope you have, the less carrying capacity you have. And it's been a problem. We've known about it for a long time. There's not a ton you can do except keep upsizing the pipe to get it to a point where it's not surcharged anymore. So that's the kind of things that we're looking for. And then again, we truth it with the staff to make sure that what we're seeing makes sense.
So then we take the anticipated build out, so you can see all this area south of the river and north of the river. That's kind of an assumed pipe network. It doesn't exist, and it probably won't look like that. But before development comes and before you actually design a system, you have to make some assumptions. And so this, working with staff, I think you already had this in GIS, if I remember right, as the proposed system. And so we take that, and now we do the same. We expand the flows to those future conditions, that build-out condition that we talked about, and we take another look. And this is not uncommon. Basically, all of the areas that were red are still red, but they get bigger. So the area here, it extends all the way down 49th Street now. The area in the industrial park is more red, and it's not uncommon at all. And so looking at these and talking with staff, there are really kind of 2 potential solutions for most problems. Make the pipe bigger or redirect it and pump it. And so we've kind of left it open-ended for the future that, depending on cost and design,
and where the development is.
And where that development actually occurs, how dense it actually is. One might make more sense than the other. So, or just how expensive it is to dig up. Downtown is far more expensive to dig up and increase line size. than somewhere that's, maybe a little more on the outskirts of town. So when we get into the CIP, and we'll kind of look at the different areas and potential solutions and try to put some costs on it. But those are much harder to cost because a lot of them are development driven. And so it's really going to depend if development looks the way the current zoning and planning looks.
Yeah, and one of the questions might be, well, how do you then size some of these pipes, that are on the outskirts, that are like south of the river? And it's all done based on what potential land use type might be, and density. So we're going off the comp plan. Again, we're thinking about the areas, how many units would be in a specific area, how much wastewater would then be generated based on that. So,
Yep.
and that's why Kevin's saying, if you get a development that's south of the river and it's going to be 400 units, now all of a sudden you can actually put in a line that actually makes the right sense. The key will be to plan that line and what else might happen around it, and that's where kind of the magic comes in, right? You got to still have to think, well, if we put in a 12, the 12 will serve that just fine. But if I get another big development just upstream of that, well, man, now all of a sudden that 12 doesn't work anymore. So that's where you coming back and revisiting the model as you get some of those development proposals in will be really key.
And you will see when we get to the CIP, some of those collection system projects are improving the model and improving the data that supports the model for that long-term planning. But just, kind of a little bit of a summary here of the build-out conditions. We'll have a list of the actual projects, but want to make it clear that it's used to establish the minimum pipe sizes. So when you see a 12-inch here, our recommendation is actually to revisit that with real development and likely upsize it. We've said upsize it at least one, if not two sizes, and that a big part of that is the unknown of population density. If the assumption was 2.9 and it's 3.6, you can oversize the sewer and it'll cause fewer issues than undersizing the sewer. And so our recommendation is, we wanted to model this based on the best available information and establish that minimum size rather than saying this is the size. And then, so essentially that's the recommendations generally are, build bigger pipe than you need. There are also tricks, if you got a huge development in one corner and nothing between that and the wastewater plant, there are ways that you can design a pipe inside a pipe that's, designed to be removed and things. There are ways to kind of right size, but ultimately, bigger is typically better. And the cost to put in a 30-inch pipe versus a 24-inch pipe is pretty similar. The pipe costs a little more, the trench gets a little bit wider. Overall, it's not whatever percent increase that is, it's going to be significantly less than that. So we also recommended future data and model updates. So update the GIS to reflect existing conditions. We try to get as much as possible, but there's still some missing info. Put some flow monitoring in strategic locations in the city to confirm the model versus those flows. As you develop and grow, continue to refine those land use assumptions and development. You put in actual developments. Also start looking at the industrial and commercial contributions. We're still just using a percentage of the total flow for those because they're kind of sparse and there's no one huge source. And then update the model with all that new info. So since that was new, I will stop and see if there are any questions before we get into really our recommendations, like where the whole point of this plan and what you paid for.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Comment. Naturally, I'm still concerned about what I consider the low population estimate.
Councilmember Spear?
Well, I'm concerned about the problems on the 37th Street and east of the railroad. I do not remember this last rainstorm, the place that you said that flooded, so that was not a very good analogy for me. But I do want to know what the problems are with the 37th Street on that side. And it's hard for us to get work done over there. So my fear is, if we have a big major problem, that it's going to be a big disaster. The second thing that I wanted to say was more of a comment towards staff. With the development south of the river, a lot of that is in the floodplain. I'm just wondering why we can't explore the opportunity to allow LaSalle to build their own wastewater treatment plant and us to contribute to that instead of going through the process of expanding our own and then having all of the work for it to go underneath the river and over onto our side. So with the growth that I know the city was talking about earlier in the work session, I just have concerns with adding LaSalle to that on top of that. So I would like to see what a contribution for us going in with them instead of them coming in with us would be. That's the only couple of comments I have right now.
Any other additional comments, questions?
So your question on the 37th, we'll talk about in just a minute when we get to the capital improvements plan. It's certainly one of the projects.
So I, along with Councilmember Neal, and I know others have mentioned this in the past as well. Again, going back to the concern, I would like to err on the side of caution. I know we have cost to consider, taxpayer money, but I don't want to be in a position where we put in, say, a 14-inch pipe, and then 5 years later, we have an explosion of growth, and it now needs to be a 16-inch pipe or whatever. I kind of want to make sure that we are planning this to where we don't have to come back, whoever's here 5 years from now, 10 years from now, doesn't have to say, oh, we have to do this all over again. I want to make sure that we are really honing in on those numbers, and if we have to build a little bit more, I mean, granted, it's taxpayer money, but I would rather be in that position that we've built it up a little bit rather than having to come revisit it 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mayor, and really it comes back to the community development plan, right? At the end of the day, what the land uses are. I think that's an opportunity for the city to really dictate what those densities are. I think the times when these sneak up on you are when a parcel's been slated as single-family residential, let's say 4 units per acre, so really spread out. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes in and they say, yeah, I want to do 15 units per acre and completely change it. Now all of a sudden that sewer system is going to be a challenge, right? So I think having continuing to engage and develop your community development plan is going to be super important to know. That is your opportunity to kind of guide where the city's going to go.
And also, if I might add, the HDR has developed the beginnings of a sanitary sewer model similar to our water model, which was developed early on in a couple other projects. And with that tool, we can play with that model and look at what the land uses are doing, as Kevin mentioned, and we can adjust those 12-inch pipe sizes as needed. For instance, if something on the very upstream end of the system comes in, then we design the entire system to handle everything upstream and all the way down to wherever it's going to end up being. And that model can be used to help drive smart growth within the area of development. So that's the beauty of having this tool in hand. The next step will be have somebody to be able to develop it, whether it be an outside consultant initially, and then eventually city staff as we grow.
Yeah, so, if you don't mind, maybe I'll just give one more example. So other communities that maybe have an area like you all have south of the river that, let's say, 15 years ago started the development process, and they've kind of got, you know, a pocket of development here and here, and they've got a couple of sewers that are coming in, and it's been established, and you had, let's say, a land parcel that was going to be relatively sparsely populated, and now all of a sudden the landowner wants to come in and they want a redevelopment. Now they want to go in and they want to put in, again, multi-family type units. What others have done, and this is again something that may be something you all have to address when you get to that point, is you say, okay, we can redo this, but this sewer line can't handle that flow, and you all are going to be responsible now for upsizing that line. Now that's like it goes in now, and we're having this conversation in 15 years. It's not ideal, but those are the types of conversations that do occur in other areas. See it right now at the city of Westminster. They've got an area that they want to completely redevelop the sewer system in that area. Absolutely cannot handle it, and they're going to be responsible for not only upsizing the sewer but the water system in that area as well. So it doesn't mean that you won't ever get a chance to fix it. It just,
Right.
But I agree. You know, if the more planning and thought that can go into that, the better off you're going to be.
And when we get to those fixes for the existing system, I think the plan would be to be conservative, because you do not want to get into that a second time. Like, those are, you also potentially can gather data, right? You can gather real flow data and say, okay, this is what we actually see. So,
And I think that kind of also goes back, as you mentioned, our plan and what we were talking about in our work session, and Mayor Pro Tem brought it up, is identifying those pockets of where we really think that the development's going to happen. Make sure those areas are clearly identified, and make sure that whether it's a large retail or small type of business, that we look at that infrastructure and say, okay, we're planning for this, and this is what we'd like to see here, and make sure that infrastructure is built out to handle that. That way, when they do go in there, we don't have to, as you mentioned, go back there and re-engage, a few years later.
And then the last question about being able to send flow south over to LaSalle, that was discussed as well. There's some flexibility there, and I think as you all have conversations, it may make more sense on the south side of the river to send that flow to somewhere else instead of trying to get underneath the river and getting it over to Hill and Park. So those things will be evaluated as that area gets developed. Yeah, the key here on the areas that Kevin showed that were in blue is to have something in place. So it's going to go to North Front Range Water Quality Planning Association. You got to have something there. Otherwise, you end up having to go through this whole process all over again. You want a lot of flexibility. That's why Kevin was saying we might upsize pipes, we might do a lift station in a certain location, and it's a little unknown. And the reason that it's that way is to provide you all flexibility as you get into it in the future.
Fantastic. Any other additional questions, comments?
all right. So that's a lot. Too many words. Apologize. Just wanted to make sure we kind of got the whole summary here. But essentially, the CSIP projects, so that's the acronym on the left, that's Collection System Improvements Project. So they will all start with a CSIP. The liquid treatments will be LTIP and solids S. And so that when we look at the numbering system, that's the point of it. But each of these has the recommended upgrades. And again, these are minimum. But a good example is in number 1, where there's a 2,000 feet of 15-inch that we're recommending upsizing to 24-inch. That's more than double the capacity when you consider the actual area of a pipe. Whereas others, you might only be going from 12 to 15 because it's undersized, but it's not grossly undersized. And so 1 through 6 are kind of actual projects, kind of work underground, and 7 through 11 are the different model data projects that would help for that long-term planning and being set up that a developer comes in and you can plug it in. Mark has the model and can plug in this new development and say, how is it going to impact our sewer system? I would say the model is not there right now. It is a good overall kind of conceptual level model of your system. It is not detailed enough to take a parcel and say it's going to develop this way and how that's going to affect the whole system. Not that it can't be used for that, because it can. It's just not quite as simple as a fully developed model might be.
Yeah, when we did the master plan back in 2011, these were similar recommendations back then as well. These were some of the areas where we knew there were some weaknesses in the model. So, and truthfully, in the window of time over the last decade, the flow monitoring equipment has gotten a lot better. It's now typically operated off batteries. It can be used in different locations, so you could buy 2 or 3 flow meters and put them in a couple of spots and have it collect data for 6 months. And now we're going to move them over here. And so oftentimes utilities will have a few of these in their portfolio and then just kind of move them around. So something to keep in mind as well.
And so we'll get into the breakdown of the phase 1 versus phase 2, but some of those more immediate, are in phase 1. They're kind of in you should do it now. Others, 6 is the easiest example, is only if LaSalle flow is incorporated, or to your point, Ms. Spear, the opposite, right? Like if the flow goes toward LaSalle, then that project goes away but becomes something kind of similar in the opposite direction. And then a number of these are also development driven. So this, number 4 is development. So while we put that in something called phase 2, it just means it's out in the future, but we can't tell you when that development's going to need that lift station.
That could be next year. They come in and say, hey, we got a project for you.
Right.
So this kind of shows those first 6 projects. You can see these colored tags represent each. So number 1 is up here along 37th. 2 is, and this is one that may be fixed by upsizing pipe, or adding a lift station, or some combination of the 2. But again, like Matt said, this is intended to allow approval to happen now from North Front Range that lets you get the best design for the future. Number 3 over here, 4 is that new development in the south, 5 is the new development out west, 6 is LaSalle. I guess before I go on, I'm happy to go through these individually or talk through them, but I think the map probably gives you a better idea of what we're looking at.
As you can see, that 37th Avenue is one of the critical projects to get that upsized. We talked about it earlier.
And then we get into the liquid treatment CIP summary. So again, there's 10 total projects. And when we get into the phasing in a subsequent slide, we'll kind of break out which of these is in that phase 1 and phase 2. But really, the number 4, that is your treatment capacity. The aeration basins, that is where you get your organic removal. And so that's the heart of the project in the liquid side. Solids, again, there's just one project. It's a big project. It's the project that didn't happen 5 years ago, and it is a full solids handling system. So the wastewater treatment plant site, I think you all have been out there, but just kind of wanted to color code the phasing. So this green color represents the areas where that phase 1, today's project would occur. So, adding MOB media in the aeration basins, I think this is a blower and RAS pumps, and the headworks screening, the WAS media retention, that's that's critical to the specific recommended process. And then on the other side, where the lagoons are, is that new solids handling process. Phase 2 is the blue, and that's just representing, most of these projects are actually just upgrading in existing structures. So those don't involve concrete infrastructure. And then the long term, like beyond that phase 2, the long-term regulation 31 requirements, we have some placeholders for, you know, 4th train in your aeration basins, 4th clarifier, a new treatment building on the other side for that, you know, advanced level of treatment. Again, we're not sure it's going to look exactly like this, depending on new technologies. But if they told us we had to design this today, this would be the best we could do, and the approximate footprints. So phasing, you know, we can go back to the charts for what the numbers actually mean, but essentially the early phase is those few projects to fix the existing collection system, and then 8 through 11 or 7 through 11 are the projects to, you know, improve your modeling and planning, or, you know, so that you can be ready to quickly respond to a development inquiry. Then the liquid treatment improvements 1, 4, 5, and 6. So basically, improve and expand the headwork screening. It's currently an issue. The secondary process, that is our capacity issue, and the solids handling system. And then we have phase 2, which we said it's 2028 to 2038, or based on development. You know, I can't stress enough that, you know, some of this could happen next year if development occurred in the right spot, or was planned in the right spot. But our best guess in coordination with staff is that most of that's probably at least 5 years out before you'd see enough development to warrant major projects. But it's increasing some of those sewer sizes in the development areas, new lift stations in the development areas, and then it's the rest of the liquid treatment improvements. So expanding some of the pumping and grit handling capacity, upgrading the UV disinfection system, increasing the capacity of pumping systems, and also the pump life is part of that as well, and the UV, you know, depending on the equipment, anything in a wastewater plant has a life of, let's call it 10 to 20 years. It depends on a number of factors, but, you know, you're going to be, you know, kind of at that point where replacement is a consideration for many pieces of equipment. And then just some miscellaneous improvements. They're not substantial, you know, moving some weirs and things like that, but to make sure you get that expanded hydraulic capacity, if you remember, to go from the current 2.9 MGD to 3.2. We're not, that's not a major concern. It's really the organic loading and the treatment of those organics that are driving the project, but that has to be addressed within that 20-year time frame, because there will be an increase in flow as well. This is probably a little better to look at in the report, but it's giving that time frame again, similar colors. This green is this phase 1. Though the top rectangle here gives the drivers. So, you know, these are mostly like when we're expecting new regulatory limits. Likely you've already seen Regulation 85. The effluent temperature limits is, you know, coming, but still unclear how it's going to be implemented. Ammonia criteria is unlikely to impact you, but it's still going to happen. But the big one is this 2038 time frame for the Reg 31 nitrogen and phosphorus. So, you know, then the middle is, you know, what we expect to happen in your permit over that same time frame, and then the proposed projects down below. Really just a different way of presenting the the same plan. And what you all are excited about is how much it's actually going to cost. So broken it out into, phase one has both collection system and wastewater improvements. That collection system improvements, it's going to depend a lot on, what the solution actually is. How bad digging up the, downtown would be, or how much that lift stations are not cheap either, and they have a long-term maintenance requirement. But sometimes they're much easier to construct than a bunch of pipe in existing ground. And then 29 for this first phase of the treatment project. This is a little more vague. The collection system improvements based on development. We've done it based on a per linear foot cost for pipe. But that's why there's a plus on these, because it's really going to be dependent on the design and what's going on in that area. The phase 2 wastewater treatment plant improvements are they're easier to define and estimate. And back to our meeting a month ago, that 10 million was lumped into this 29, and really it represents what we could reasonably push off, about $10 million worth of the improvements. And that's kind of in that 5 to 10 year time frame. Some of it might push out a little further, but I think you can expect to budget it within that time frame. And then you have that long-term project that we expect would cost, in today's dollars, at least $30 million. It'll cost a lot more then, but we kind of have to work in today's dollars for the purposes of this. So with that, I don't know, Ms. Spear, if we want to talk a little bit more about the 37th Street. I know we didn't quite answer the details of what the problem is. I think Mark can probably speak better to that than I can. Or if you're satisfied with that, we can talk about other questions.
Satisfied.
Satisfied's relative, right?
Never. I don't think I need to talk about it too much here. It's just, it's kind of just frustrating for us we have a new pump station there and a new line, and then for it to be problematic, and there hasn't really been growth there. So is it just because it's old or what? Because I do recall 37th Street being torn up one time, just a few years ago, to have a new system put in. And I know I saw from the lift station that go through the park and down 42nd. And I guess my bigger point is not so much getting new pipe, which would be fantastic, but there's always problems with, tearing up the old side of town, and including once it's torn up, it doesn't get replaced on the surface level. So now we might be able to have more flow to the lift station, but then we've got a patchwork, street that's it's gone under. So that's just my only concern, is that if we're up there, if we need to replace it and repair it, that's fine, but we need to do it at a time where after it's replaced and repaired, that we can go through and pave over it too, or just finish part of the aesthetics and just not pave it at all, with the rest of the unpaved roads. So looks like one of these might be going down an unpaved road to begin with. So it's just frustrating to hear that with the new lift station and the new pipe that went in within the last 10 years. This is 2015, 2016, that we have to go back to that repair again.
I can help clarify. The pipeline in question is probably about 60 years old. It's It's an old pipe in 37th Street going underneath the highway. It wasn't touched 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
I'm saying 37th was replaced.
Oh, 37th.
And this looks like it's going down 37th Street.
Yeah, it is. But the pipe in question is 60 years old, has nothing to do with the lift station. That's all adequate.
So the issue is that the pipe size, the old pipe, 60-year-old pipe, is too small and too flat. And one of the possibilities to reduce the amount of road impact would be to burst the pipe. But there's limitations, because when you burst the pipe, you're basically pushing a new pipe through that and pushing out the old pipe. So essentially putting an auger through the pipe and just making it bigger. There's limitations on what you can do with that, but the benefit is it reduces the amount of asphalt you have to put back. You only have to put it back where you start and stop and where there's any services that are tapped into that line. But you can only upsize essentially from an 8 to a 12, an 18 to possibly a 24, but that's pushing the limit. If we have to replace the pipe in kind and actually dig it up and replace it, that's obviously going to disturb a lot more of the road. And yeah, the goal would be to use both street funds and sanitary sewer funds to put the road back in a better condition. But those funds would have to be available from both funds in order to be able to do that.
Okay, the drawing here said it has 37th Street on there, not 32nd Street.
Yeah, 37th is what we're talking about, yes.
So 37th Street.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I've driven down it and it's been torn up and new pipe has been put down there. So
In 37th, east of the track.
east of the tracks.
Like you said, it was about 10 years ago.
East,
Well,
that,
it was
no,
the force-
the pump station was 10 years ago.
That's the force main, so that's different.
Yeah,
The
but
gravity
I've
main-
driven down there, I haven't driven it for 60 years, so I know that it's not, that 37th Street is not 60 years old. There has been new pipe put down there. And right now, we're getting new Atmos, Atmos is going through there, and it's a patchwork. So my issue with the whole thing is if we're gonna replace the pipe, we need to replace the road.
And that would be the goal, but we'd have to make sure the funds would be available from both street side budget and wastewater budget. That would be the plan.
Yeah, I understand that. I just am, I guess right now as a citizen, I'm really tired of the dilapidatedness of the east side. And it's patchwork, 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 and everything comes in there. And if something's gonna be repaired, then it's a patchwork. And it's just really tiresome to have to live in shambles on that side of the highway. So I'm hoping that somehow, if we have to repair things, that we repair it in totality and make that side look nicer and operate better. So that's my only point.
And that would be our goal as well. One of the things we would do is part of the project, if we're open cutting and replacing it in kind, we would backfill it and then build out the trench so that it's ready. And then we would just, similar to what we did out here on 37, mill and overlay the entire stretch and then come back and put an entire new surface on the top.
That's fantastic. So with this in mind though, when can we get this project done on 37th Street with the fact that Atmos has already come in there and ripped it up? I mean, this is a different subject. Sorry, it's not for you guys too much, but I mean, Atmos has already gone through and tore up the streets down on that side. So now or sometime soon would be a great time to have something like this done where we can go ahead and just one time repair the streets. And then my further question was, how long do we have to live with the patchwork streets? But that's something for another day. I just want to voice my concern over the fact that the east side gets patched and patched and patched and not replaced and repaired, and it just looks more dilapidated as the years go by. So.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes, I have one here. I wrote some notes. You mentioned that to transport liquid waste in a tanker would cost a lot more than putting in a drum actually rotary thickerer. Explain that to me. Why is the cost difference?
Yeah, so, one of the things that comes out of a wastewater plant is a mixture of biosolids and water.
Right.
And so that water is heavy and it takes up a lot of space. So if you want to truck, and what would be a good analogy? So the unthickened waste is, let's call it 2% solids, which would look like, what's a good,
Kind of, thick, muddy water,
I
maybe.
think we said cake
We-
last time.
Cake and pudding and chocolate that we could eat.
But it's gonna flow like liquid. It's not gonna look like there's any salt. But if you remove a lot of that water and get it to be about 20% solids and 80% water, which seems like a lot, that becomes like
Heavy.
topsoil that you would buy at Home Depot. Like that's got way more moisture in it than you would think. And so what you're doing is you're keeping that water in your wastewater treatment plant and discharging it to the river instead of taking that 20% water and sending it to that field by truck. And so it's just because of the volume and the weight, it's expensive to transport the water with the solids.
So putting the contents in a 55-gallon drum and adding additive to it as a thickener, would you think that has more mass, more weight to transport out of it?
So the equipment is called a rotary drum thickener.
Mhm.
And think of it as a big metal mesh drum that's turned on its side, and it rotates this way. So what you have is this liquid coming in one side. The water then goes out the perforations, and that thickened solids then goes out the end. So it's the solids themselves are what would be going into transport. The drum thickener, it's a little misleading. It's not a drum. It's not what we're taking out in a drum. It's a piece of equipment that rotates.
I understand.
Yeah, it's a little bit like what you'd see at a quarry, where
Right.
they're separating the small rocks from the big rocks. Same thing. It's just water's going out instead of the solids. Yeah. But to put it in perspective, if you had a 5% solids and 95% liquid, or a 10% solids and a 90%, if you go just that extra 5%, you actually decrease your number of truck trips by half. So every time you do that, you decrease it in half. So pretty significant. So if you're going from 3% to 20%, you can imagine the savings of how many trucks would have to leave the site.
It's like a juicer, you
Yeah.
put in,
There you go.
and it just out.
Right.
It's a better,
Yeah.
visual.
Thanks for the
Yeah.
food.
Big juicer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any
All
other
right.
questions?
No, thank you for clearing the drum. It was
Yeah, it's misleading, for sure.
Councilmember Neal?
Yes, can you tell me which side of the Highway 85 the current lagoon system is in the south?
It's on the east side.
On the east side?
East side,
Okay,
south
thank
of
you.
the river. Yes, south and east.
So if you did get LaSalle to build a sewer system that would help us, then you'd have to pipe it under 85 somehow.
Yeah.
Might be easier than the river though.
It might be.
Any other additional questions, comments?
I think I appreciate all of the hard work that HDR has put into this. It's been invaluable to have all of the information and have it dissected in a way that's really easy to understand. So thank you very much for that. I also really appreciate that this is a sizable plan that we can look at and really utilize and develop as the city develops. So I think that's great. I think from a financing standpoint, moving forward, for staff's perspective, my biggest concern would be just continued reassessment of the SDFs to make sure that they're strong enough to support whatever this shows. I thought of it when you said, oh, well, if we had that next year, and I guess part of that too has to be, you've got to have enough of the fees collected to be able to support that, which will support future growth. That's also going to be paying into that. So I think from a financial standpoint, that's just where my head goes on that piece. But overall, I think it looks fantastic. I really, really appreciate the hard work. You've done a fantastic job, and just really want to express my thanks for that, and really for the staff for all the support that they provided to you to get this done. A really great job to everybody involved in this. Thank you.
I would have to agree with that. I really like the thoroughness and explanation for a lot of this, here in the plan. I mean, we're not the experts, but it's good to hear a lot of it in just simple terms for us to understand it. I also am very thankful that you took into consideration all of our thoughts and opinions and actually incorporated into that plan, address our concerns about the growth population and everything, and I really like that it is a living plan, and it can be adjusted as needed, and all of that information is there. Hey, we have growth here, this is what we need to do, and I really like the thoroughness of that, so thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree. It just helps us plan better for the future, and just seeing, and I think, looking at all the pipes that are being replaced on the east side, I do agree with what Councilmember Spear mentioned, ensuring that we do allocate funds for those areas that we do switch out the pipes, because I don't foresee, any, big development happening in that area, so they'll probably maintain the way it is for some time. So definitely ensuring, and that's on our end, really just ensuring that as we do this, we also ensure that it's well done, that the streets are paved and it looks nice, because again, once we're in there, I don't foresee us going back in there, anytime soon. So just making sure that those roads are paved and that we do allocate funds for that, however we do that. And right now, it's a great time to plan that because there are funds available. And so just really working towards that and ensuring that that area looks well. But great job. I do agree with what was mentioned. Super simplified, layman's terms. We're able to make even our own analogies because you simplified it to that point. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
There are no additional questions, comments?
Mark?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm still somewhat concerned about the growth projections. I certainly don't want to be visiting this again in 5 years, but I think that they have designed enough flexibility in there with the growth projections and the development that this is a workable plan, and adjustments can be made, but it's very unfortunate that this council is the one that has to answer to the citizens on this, that the increased cost of having to do this only 5 years after the other one was completed.
I completely 100% agree with that statement. I'm not sure your thoughts and concerns on that, so I agree.
Yeah, and I don't know if it came across, but the 20-year planning window that we used for the treatment plant was much more conservative than the build-out condition. We were trying to distinguish the two and let you all know that we did hear you, and the wastewater plant is much more conservative from a population standpoint. So, and as you noted, it's flexible as well.
Right.
For growth.
I would entertain a motion if there's no additional questions or comments.
I move to approve resolution number 14-2023 to adopt the City of Evans 2023 wastewater utility master plan.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 14-2023 to adopt the City of Evans 2023 wastewater utility master plan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Did I press second?
I know.
He's like, well, no, I'm not going to do it.
Well, you guys always jump in the gun. It's
Yeah, you gotta
timing.
be fast.
I know, it's like,
Still didn't get it. It's
no, you
timing.
got it. We give that
No,
second.
that's
to
second,
Brian.
that's a Brian second.
That's a Brian second.
Okay.
Oh, awesome. See, you got you.
Okay.
Boom. On
Okay.
record.
All right.
All right, moving on. Item number 8, under new business, consideration of amended development agreement with Moffett Flats LLC, known as Moffett Gloss. We'll hear from staff.
Angela Snyder, Community Development. So what you have before you was the result of the applicant, Eric Stern, the owner of Moffett Glass, who had approached staff. And he approached staff and asked us to re-look at his development agreement to see if everything that was included in it was fair and appropriate and all that. As you're probably aware, we did have a change in policy since his development agreement was approved last fall. Our current direction is that those individual site improvements agreements should just have public improvements on them. It's possible that a developer, if they don't have their landscaping done before a CO, could come to us and ask for another agreement at that time for landscaping. But we'd like to keep the landscaping and other kind of improvements for the subdivision agreements, where there are actually a lot of common areas and it's not just roads we're working on. There's a lot involved. But Moffett Glass was an individual site redevelopment project. And when we looked at it, we found that that agreement did in fact have a lot of landscaping and fencing on it. And staff does propose that we amend the Moffett Glass, actually the Moffett Flats LLC agreement with the City of Evans to just cover the public improvements, which takes that amount of capital that he has set aside for this project down from $69,000 to $4,000. Staff does recommend approval of amending the development agreement.
Awesome. Great. Any questions, comments of staff?
Yeah, I got a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is this what was holding up this project all along?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
That was my question, was how long will it take for him to get a CO if this is lifted?
Very quickly.
Okay, great. Because I know they were really excited to be here in Evans, and it's just a little discouraging to not see them in operation. So if this explains why they're not operating, I would really like to see us encourage it to go along quickly.
Yeah. So they actually reached out to me first and wanted to have a meeting about this. We arranged it within a few days.
Yes.
We all came to the table. They showed us their plans, the planners and the inspectors made some of their recommendations and everything. And I think we had it all figured out. Yourself, Heather, and the rest of the staff had it all done. And he walked out there probably in about 15 minutes with a huge smile on his face and said, "Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you." I'm glad somebody actually took the time to listen to me and address my concerns.
I mean, we want our businesses to look attractive.
Absolutely.
And if it's, an older building, it needs to be updated and it needs to look good. I mean, we want to do that, but, to hold it up for unnecessary reasons is a little discouraging. So I'm glad that you guys were able to get this solved.
Yeah. Her team knocked it out of the park.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think excellent job. My only thought in hearing that is I would love to just have a consideration of other things that might be holding up to make sure we don't have anything else like that. That instead of them approaching us, wouldn't it be great if we said, "Hey, after further consideration, here's a way in which we can make it better." But really excellent job listening and assisting a business that we're very excited to have here. So
I know
appreciate
they're
it.
working on others that there were some concerns about. I don't know what the outcome of that's going to be, but I definitely know she's got a lot on her plate that she's working with others that have reached out. So not only myself, but to Cody as well, and had some serious concerns. So
I do remember a lonely tree in the back of someone's place that I questioned. So I'm glad to hear you're looking at more. So
yeah,
we're
fantastic.
Trying to do what we can.
yeah.
Really great job.
There's no additional questions, comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the amendment to the development agreement.
Go ahead.
I'm not backing down, with Moffett Flats LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion is second to approve the amendment to the development agreement with Moffett Flats LLC and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
All right, go Moffett.
All right, next item number 9, consideration of ordinance number 796-23, an ordinance amending chapter 8.25 of the Evans Municipal Code to apply noise standards and noise elimination from vehicle sound systems, and we will hear from staff.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. This is a simple code change to allow for the enforcement of the noise ordinance regarding noise emanating from vehicles. So it reduces the distance to 50 feet from a vehicle, whereas the existing noise ordinance 8.25 is 100 feet from real property. And it also amends the definition of plainly audible to include being vibrated by music or being able to determine the cadence of music, and so emanating from a vehicle. This was drafted at the request of our police department and our chief of police, Rick Brandt, who was supposed to be beatboxing behind me for effect. He's not here. He couldn't spray Narcan, so he decided he didn't want to come.
So your accompaniment left.
Yes. And that concludes my remarks.
All right. Great. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I do have a question now. Just to be fair, what equipment are we using to actually measure the actual decibels? What are we using to scale that?
It's not a decibel measurement, but a distance measurement, and the radar instruments are able to detect the distance of a vehicle from the officer that's using the radar device. So if it's more than 50 feet, that would come into evidence.
Okay.
So what about the ice cream man?
Oh,
I mean, I can hear my ice cream man a couple of blocks away, and I don't think that we should be chasing him down. I mean, is it within reason?
That's an exception under the code, and even if it wasn't, police officers could also issue a warning, but that, I believe I'll look at the code. There's an exception for that under the code.
So I just also want to let the police department know if they would like some additional funding, they are more than welcome to camp out at my house, because I would be calling them every 5 minutes, probably 20 hours out of the day. So.
Because of ice cream trucks?
No. Not the ice cream truck.
Okay. I'm like the lady that gets me. I'm like, I gotta find the ice cream truck.
We'll say drivers around the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yes.
I do have one quick question on this. I too have some issues with
the ice
people
cream
in the neighborhood. Yeah. Yes, that's a whole other issue. But when a vehicle is parked at a residence and loud, where does that fall? Is that a residence noise ordinance or a vehicle one? Because the noise is coming from the vehicle, but it's parked at the residence.
Under this, it would be the vehicle, because the definition of noise source is being amended to include equipment located either inside a residence, which it already is, but also now a vehicle is being added to the definition of noise source. So that would be the vehicle.
Okay, perfect. No, that's great. I just, yeah, like I said, there's some issues there, but this looks great.
No additional questions, comments?
One other question. What are the proposed fines for violating these ordinances? Do we have any?
The maximum fine is $2,650, subject to the determination of the municipal court judge upon conviction.
Unless you're the ice cream man, and then it's 2 ice cream sandwiches and a bar.
Is that a first offense? I'm sorry. Is that the first offense?
That's correct. That's for each and every offense.
Don't worry.
That fine is not actually imposed. I'm going to throw a ballpark figure out. It's $50 or $100.
Okay.
So this includes, I mean, apparently somebody in Amanda's neighborhood does it outside of in their vehicle. So this includes City Park and.
If it's in a vehicle or coming from a vehicle, yes, it'd be throughout the city.
Okay.
And then
To
also.
answer a
Travis,
council
I will
member's
not
question,
call.
one thing that I do wonder is if a vehicle were parked on someone's driveway in real property, you
Yeah.
could call the vehicle itself equipment that's located on residential property. I'd give them 100 feet for that. But if it was on the right of way, it'd be 50 feet or
It's on the right
otherwise
of way,
anywhere
so.
else.
Traditionally.
All right, if there are no,
I just have one last thing.
No, we thinking,
the
we
reason-
thinking.
no, so for this, for example, if someone were to, in essence, get fined for this, I mean, granted, it's typically like a ticket that you get, but let's just a ticket, right? But the thing is, it's also looked at as a crime if someone has a business and they're coming to the city for a liquor license. The reason why I asked is because I remember at the bottom, there was a question asked, have you committed a crime? And the person stated no, but when they were ticketed because of a noise infraction, it's considered a crime. And so I just wanted to ensure also that
And they need to say yes.
that it's known, like you're getting a ticket, therefore it's a crime.
It's in our municipal code that it's a non-traffic misdemeanor, which is a
I
crime.
know, but it's kind of one of those things that like you don't. It's because it's a ticket, you know. It's not like it's.
It would be
Handcuffed
like a
and
non-moving
going to jail.
violation.
Exactly.
It would be like a non-moving violation.
It's not a traffic violation.
Okay.
It's
It is not.
It's a municipal ordinance violation that's a
Okay.
misdemeanor
So
under
it's
the code.
different.
Okay.
It's a crime.
And weeds could be cited in the same manner, or other things that are typically, they're infractions or misdemeanors, so it's similar, or littering or other types of activities that are prohibited under our code.
Okay. That's
all
it.
right. Going once, going twice.
I have
All
more
right.
questions, but it'll be like sidebar.
I'd entertain a motion if there's no additional questions or comments.
I move to adopt resolution number 15-2023.
Second.
Well,
No.
no, you're on the wrong one.
What?
I move to adopt proposed ordinance number 796-23, amending chapter 8.25 of the Evans Municipal Code to regulate unreasonable noise.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt proposed ordinance number 796-23, amending chapter 8.25 of the Evans Municipal Code to regulate unreasonable noise. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item number 10, consideration of resolution number 15-2023, approving a restrictive notice upon certain lands within Riverside Park, and we all hear from staff on this.
Good evening again. A restrictive notice is a type of legal document that limits the unfettered use of real property. Under Article 15, Title 25 of the Colorado Revised Statutes, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment is authorized to determine and issue restrictive notices on real property where there may be environmental damage that would result from the unfettered use of that real property. And in this case, the department has identified portions of Riverside Park to be subject to a restrictive notice because of because of the former use as a landfill, that if there was unrestricted use could cause environmental damage. The city staff has reviewed the restrictive notice and has determined that it will not interfere in any way with the city's use of Riverside Park as a park or of its maintenance. So it's really not going to affect the city in any way if the department records this with the Weld County Recorder. It will affect future owners of the real property in the event the city ever sells Riverside Park. But in this case, it really doesn't affect the city's use of Riverside Park. Here is the map of the areas that would be subject to the restrictive notice. This was provided from a 2017 plat that was sent to the department. And then the legal description was used with the same information. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I have a question. How does that affect the transmission towers and the solar panels that may be on that? think are in that area?
Well, there are certain activities that can't be done, grading, grazing, construction, other things that might disturb the surface of the property.
Well, I mean, if
The
they,
solar panels aren't in that striped area.
okay. What about the transmission towers? Are
The
any of those in
transmission
there?
towers are.
So if they have to work on them or replace them, I know they're down to bedrock, I think. But
If they had to work on them, they'd only be working overhead. They're not likely to be underground with them at all. So they shouldn't have any impact. This should
Well,
not have
hopefully
any
not,
impact.
but you never know.
Yeah.
And it does state that you can drive through this restriction for maintenance, so they're out of the capped area, so there wasn't any modifications to that capped area, it was restricted use. So if they need to go and do any maintenance, they'd be able to do that.
Great. So I just have to say, I had a lengthy conversation with Drew today because this map isn't an accurate map. I would like to hear what they say is the boundary of the landfill as far as legal description. But the boundary is incorrect. I mean, part of it, I know this for a fact because that dog-eared corner of our property was not a dog-eared corner back in the landfill days, that we actually owned a complete there. The Evans Ditch went straight across through, just south of our property, it went straight across there. So I'm just saying, also, Platt has an E at the end of it. So the story on this, from what I gather, and as being on the task force, it was a push it through, try to get it through, send whatever we could find the quickest we could find because we wanted to get government funding on the flood recovery. So a lot of this stuff is not correct. We sent this into them. They have now sent it back to us. And what I'm fearful of is that there's this kind of documentation where major decisions are being made. I'm not against what's brought up tonight with that area there. That's not the issue. My issue was the fact that we are dealing with maps and not, this was the Weld County landfill. It was pushed off onto the public as an unknown landfill when clearly, I mean, I could scrape off some paint and show you exactly where it says Weld County landfill on the buildings that were there. So that's my only concern, was that, this is being basically maybe a 1995 or older map. And then I don't know, I mean, how the squiggly line on the property line is very, very strange. And anyways, I just wanted to bring it to attention publicly that this map is not the most accurate, but usable, I guess, in this circumstance.
No, I agree with you. We don't really know the full extent of how far that landfill went out.
Some people do.
Some people do.
I know people who worked for it.
Yeah.
So,
But probably record it somewhere.
Well, it's Weld County. You'd think that they would know it. You know where your property lines are.
Yeah.
And so where I think what happened is in the soon after the flood, it was what map can we get to, into the Department of Environmental policies to get this pushed through to get the funding for this. And so I just kind of caution that maybe sometime we can get better maps, we can get more in depth on property lines if we need to. And it is just a point that I need to make, since I'm not going to be here sitting on this council for very long, that these maps were 2017, and clearly this was a 1995 is when the dog ear kind of occurred. So using maps that are not all accurate, and information that's not all accurate. So, and yes, that Platte River without the E in there really does bother me. So.
I'll ask the AG's office to add the E.
Anyways.
No, agree. Yep. Any other additional questions, comments?
No.
Entertain motion. All right, come on, Tammy.
There you go.
I know
Now
you're
it's
really,
time.
you're all over it.
No, it's me. I can't make motion.
Okay, here we
All
go.
right.
I move to adopt resolution number 15-2023.
Second.
Motion is second to approve, adopt resolution number 15-2023. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Great, thank you, Drew, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, reports, city manager.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I just have a couple of items for you here tonight. First, over the weekend I emailed and I discussed it earlier, but over the weekend I did send you a draft code enforcement policy. It's in email. It is in line with what our expectations are moving forward for code enforcement, trying to cut out the unnecessary delays in the time as it takes to abate these nuisances and hopefully start cleaning up the community in a little bit more expeditious manner. I would like to bring that back to the council for additional consideration here in the near future. So if you get a chance, please review it. If you have any questions, please get a hold of me. It has gone through legal review. Drew, you indicated it looks good from your perspective. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. The second thing, and Scott, you may be planning on touching on this a bit more, but Senate Bill 23-213 towards the end of last week did pass the Senate. It passed the Senate with the removal of the preemptions. However, it's in the House now, going through the House committees where they are reintroducing the preemptions. So we will certainly take a close look at that. It looks like they're trying to add everything back in that had been removed. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that. And then lastly, I've been asked to ask you to leave your old iPads there at your position. We will collect them after the meeting. Mr. Mayor, that's all I've got.
Thanks, sir, appreciate it. City Attorney.
And Senate Bill 213 was the only thing I was going to mention, and the only thing I would add to what the city manager mentioned is that we don't know where it's going to end up, and this is the last week of the legislature, so it may not even go anywhere. Or they're making the proposals as we speak, so it could end up with either the Senate version or the House version, or a compromise, or nothing at all. So that's a very helpful report, I think, that all is there.
Great, thank you, sir, appreciate it. All right, next item, audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address city council on any item? Seeing none, we adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Did you guys see about Tacoma, City of Tacoma
Yes.
City Council?
Yes.
No? Yeah.